So guys, in your opinion, how do we then start working together? The design team and the construct team. How do we bring them closer? I want to start with Ben now.
Okay,
Start with me.
Sorry.
Oh, I like to think about it while he's talking, you know.
Yeah, I know. See, no. That's why we're cutting to you first, mate.
How do we make it better? I think
One of the ideas you presented was, put the onus on the construction company.
The company, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And we'll try and cut the council out of it by
Yeah.
getting the products,
Yeah.
the product supplier
Yeah.
accountable for his
Yeah.
product.
Or just basically like just putting a solid baseline that when things do go awry, it's like a place to revert to that everyone's comfortable and everyone is happy with. Right at the moment, it's super grey, right? In terms of like no one really knows who's going to take liability. Everyone knows that if this goes wrong, I can push it off to this person. If this goes wrong, I can push it this way, this way, this way, this way. I think if we can figure out a way to get that even baseline, then it's a good foundation for everything to build up on top of. But at the moment, it's shaky ground, so everything sort of builds up like a house of cards, and then one thing slightly goes awry and it's over.
Yep.
So I think it's about finding that happy baseline. I think there's endless ways that you could come up with that. Whether that's you get everyone involved day one. So you say to the client, you're not just paying the architect's fees, you're paying everyone's fees today. So that's probably never going to happen because no one's going to eat that bullet. But in an ideal world, it would be good to sit down and have like a studio session with the engineer and with this and with that. Cause
with the main construction company.
with the main construction company.
The subcontractors
the whole
who actually
lot.
build the job.
Exactly. And because all contractors are different. Some contractors are great with timber, some are shit with timber.
Does that ever happen? Have you ever sat down and actually presented your vision of the design?
We
Turn around and say, I'm the master picture drawer, here's the vision, with the construction company, with the engineer to the contract, with the main contractor and their subcontractors?
We've done it. We try and do
Limited.
early contractor involvement a lot. Like that's what we push to a lot of our clients, but it generally ends up being just the builder. We've only really done it on a couple of smaller projects, but that always is well received, because then it gets the builder aligned, and then you can say, it solves one of the problems at least. These are the drawings, you've seen them. Are there going to be any variations? Is there anything you want changed? And then sign them and say, sweet, variations are now on you. So then that, aligns the ships in that sense from the outset, but then equally
Well, at that
also
point, by saying that, you've just transferred your risk to the main construction company, haven't you?
Exactly. So, I think it's that,
Yeah.
but getting that baseline, I think council is a big part of that, both resource consent and building consent. The fact that they're asking for more density, but then they're saying you can't put that third story on unless you fold your roof in 50 different ways, and you've got water egress risks everywhere. It's just everyone, we need that baseline. I think that's where we need to come from.
How do we get the ships pointing in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I'll probably take it a step back, right, and just maybe give a bit of background of where New Zealand's at in the construction industry, particularly with the projects that we see coming off on our desk. The reality is, we are 2016 was when the unitary plan was released, right? So we're 7 years into understanding how to build multi-unit housing. It's a very short time frame, and it's probably fair to say that we're not set up for it. And I think I can lean on my experience in that. Other countries have been doing this for years, right? They've been building large-scale apartments and multi-unit housing for years. In New Zealand, it's kind of very new, and we're talking that mid-density stuff. We're talking the 20-unit stuff. It's not. There's construction companies that in my view are just not set up for it. And I think one of the big things I noticed within the industry was a lack of communication, a lack of people working together. And it blows my mind because we're sitting in 2023. We have technology coming out our ears. We sit there with our computers on our desk, our phones, but we don't have a system where everyone's communicating in the same database, and that's from suppliers all the way through. So we still use email. It's what was that? When was that released? I think I had a Hotmail account 20 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
We haven't advanced our technologies to be able to communicate as a group and effectively execute things on site. So, there's guys still running on pads of paper and stuff like that. So I think one of the big ways to solve it would be to start to sharpen up a bit on technology, CRM systems, and ways in which everyone within that team can communicate and can communicate effectively. So the builders get that message on site. They know exactly, the architect gets the message through the CRM system. I need this, I need that, I need this. That seems to be one
There
of
are good change management systems out there.
we're just not adopting them. Like
Well,
and then
yeah.
there's certainly no
Maybe
there's certainly no group adoption of it. So
Yeah.
if,
There's definitely Aconex, there's Procore, there's other.
I think
other
larger scale projects do it for sure.
Yeah,
but
100%.
Which obviously projects like that have to run it. But these smaller ones,
So
someone's
you
gotta
guys-
pay
but
for
we're
it.
talking about that mid stuff,
Yeah.
which is the bulk of the developments that we see, and it's probably fair to say the bulk of developments that go on is, within that kind of 3 to 10 million space, right? There's probably more of that coming through, and that's just because of the way that Auckland's set up in terms of site sizes and how it's cut and divided and how the unitary plan works. There's more in that space than say your 50, 60, 100 unit type stuff.
Mate, there's a business idea right there. Why don't we set up a little software that would do change management for mid?
I'm
I'd
just
love
finishing
that.
it actually.
I'd love that.
Yeah, like literally, that's the gap in the market that you're telling me that
Yeah.
exists, and the Procos and the Aconex don't cater to mid-size development.
Yeah, and I think
Or they're too expensive. I don't know.
100%. And it's just reiterating that we're new, right? We're quite new to this. Like there are construction companies that have been around that can deliver 50 unit plus apartments and stuff, and we know those ones. But there's very limited experience in that kind of mid-density space. And you see that with some of the projects that you drive past, right? The execution's just not there.
Can I ask you one more question though?
Yeah.
England's been doing it for 100 years. They've been building row houses for 100, 200 years now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
We've just caught on to building row houses, 20 unit blocks.
Mm.
What can we learn from them? Why aren't we learning from them?
Well, it's that it's the underground rail
Public
issue, right?
transport, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
like
we're
they've been
we're still
building
not-
underground rails for like however many years, and we're only
Yeah,
just finishing ours.
Are we? We're not finishing
What
up.
can we learn? What can we learn from them? I mean, I worked in London for 5 years, right? They have the relationship between the builder and the architect is very strong over there, and it comes back again to that communication. It comes back to what Ben was talking around responsibility and who's taking ownership of what. That's probably the biggest message we can learn from them. At the moment, it's set up in a way that it's a very grey area in terms of who's taking ownership and responsibility. Everyone just passes it on to the council, I guess, in a sense. How often have we heard coming across TDC's desks? It wasn't on the drawings. It's like, well, okay, so you went and just did it anyway, but you didn't talk to us and then ask us to make that change, and then. So I think there's just a little bit of a disconnect there between lack of experience in executing those projects and what's required to communicate effectively to those involved, I guess.